Wow. No one thought it would happen, including all week entering this game. But yet, the West Virginia Mountaineers are sitting now at 4-1. I can't even believe I'm saying this. And I'm Mike Ostie, and this is our W Football postgame show here on WV Sports Now. All of our coverage of West Virginia's big win, and I can't even describe it as big enough, over TCU on the road in Fort Worth is all over at WVSportsNow.com. My Sports Now colleague, Alan Saunders, was there in attendance to cover it and kind of pinch hit for me. Didn't make the trip down to Texas, but he actually covered the Steelers for us for Steelers Now and already was down there in Texas for the Steelers at Houston and made the trip over to Fort Worth to cover this for us. So his game recaps there. He's going to be talking to Neil Brown. He's going to be getting some videos up on this very channel. All of our coverage will be at WV Sports Now. Of course, follow us on social media. And the Mountaineers did the unthinkable. And the way this game unfolded, the way they did it, makes this even more unthinkable. They were 3-1 entering the week and yet ended up basically a 2-touchdown underdog. This is a team that was 5-7 a year ago that entered this season with its head coach on the hot seat, and all the Vegas odds said Neil Brown would be among the first, if not the first head coach fired mid-season, certainly at the end of the year, if he would somehow have a stay of execution all season long. And a team that lost its first game to Penn State, one of the best teams in the country, that looks like a really, really good loss right now, as Penn State's still undefeated and they could win the Big Ten, and if not, go to the playoff. Right now, ranked number 6, but who knows? They can be moving up. And yet that game feels like a mulligan now, and that game's the last time the Mountaineers have lost a game as I'm speaking. And not only do they beat TCU on the road, and yeah, TCU did not play a perfect game. They should have won this game handily, really. West Virginia gave them their chances. They squandered opportunities, even when TCU would mess up. And several players end up getting hurt for West Virginia, which may cause a problem the rest of the season for sure. I mean, these are impact guys. Aubrey Burks on a stretcher, off the field. Prayers to him. You see Thomas Remack go down. You see Sean Martin briefly go down. Trey Layton end up going down and leaving the game, and looks like a broken leg to him. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It was a choppy, chippy game. West Virginia got banged, battered, and beat up in this game. And it's even after kind of under the radar drama, which we have on WV Sports Now, prior to this game. Under an hour before kickoff, we got a confirmation off there. There were some colleagues that had reports, but I wanted to make sure I got it confirmed because it seemed so wild that Cortez Braham, an incumbent receiver who was on the team last year, was supposed to step up this year. A few catches, didn't really do it. Made some comments a few weeks ago, actually, about this group being better than last year's. And Bryce Ford Wheaton, former Mountaineer, now rehabbing with the New York Giants, didn't like it. And the receivers have not been better. They have not been good. The same problems of last year with drop passes have been there this year. They haven't helped any quarterback, whether it be Nico or Garrett Green. And they didn't really have a good day either, except for maybe Fox. And Hudson Clement's had a solid year, got a scholarship. He wasn't even supposed to be this. So whatever he gives you is cherry on top of the sundae. But he shouldn't be your best receiver. He kind of has been. Devin Carter hasn't been the one he's supposed to be. I know his grandma passed away, but, you know, this is major ball. You're looking to go to the NFL. He's getting NIL money probably. Like, I mean, I lost my grandma too. You can't just suck then, throughout your season. So at some point, that's going to have to turn around for him. Not really the best of days for Cole Taylor has helped out, and he's another transfer ad, but not really a receiver. He's a tight end. So that's still been a problem. But all of the problems for West Virginia, and you can say that Pitt's been really, really bad and they look overrated. They lose to Virginia Tech tonight. They're now 1-4. Like, they might be the bottom of the ACC, which I don't even know how deep that conference is beyond the top. And obviously Clemson's been exposed, really Florida State and North Carolina and everybody else. And Pitt just looks awful with Phil Jurkovic. WVU won the backyard brawl thanks to 3 picks on them. Texas Tech picked preseason top 4 in the Big 12, not nearly as good. They had lost to Wyoming prior to even playing West Virginia, and yet were favored in the game. That shows you what Vegas thinks of the Mountaineers, even as they're winning. And then, of course, this game against TCU, I believe they finished at 13.5-point favored, mostly at least a 12-point favorite throughout the week. They're not the same team that was the national runner-up a year ago and was in the playoff. They're not the same team. They're not as good, obviously different QB. They're not the same team, but they're still pretty good. They lost to Colorado, open up the season. That was a major upset. And Colorado's lost to Oregon and USC, but they're still a much better team than when they were 1-11 a year before. Like Deion's doing work, 80 new players. They're good. They would probably be beating Pitt and Texas Tech as well, I would imagine. And going to be a new Big 12 team coming up. So it's not a horrible loss. They then won 3 in a row, just like West Virginia. And by the way, Neil Brown now on his first 4-game win streak as WVU head coach. First 3-game, now 4-game win streak. And that's a major win. Pitt and Texas Tech, their Power 5 wins. Pitt's an arch rival, but they're home. And they're against overrated programs for sure, certainly this year. TCU, the national reigning runner-up, even though, again, this is a different team, still a good TCU team, on the road for West Virginia. So on the road, West Virginia gets this win in Fort Worth. That's something. That's the biggest win of the year, not the backyard brawl. If you're talking about the opponent, the level of competition that you played, and what you did in the game. West Virginia's offense had been impotent prior to this game. And yeah, they had their issues, and yeah, they didn't really look that great. And yeah, Garrett Green went 9 minutes without a completion. But he did it on the ground. His 4.5 speed, that first touchdown Nico wouldn't have scored. Green's speed scored that first TD. And then he misfired on receivers as well, like Nico has. I mean, they both have had their issues. But the offense a little bit more explosive with Green. He's going to keep starting, obviously. It was the right call to start him in this game if he was healthy, and it appears he was. Lucky he didn't go out in this game and go down with all the injuries the Mountaineers did suffer, and it could even have been more players. I believe McLaurin, even Ruffin potentially were hurt in this game as well. They didn't leave. It doesn't look like serious with them, but they were banged up. CJ even at one point. Obviously last week looked like he was banged up. Maybe again here in this one. Again, Sean Martin too. So it could have been really, really bad. Could have been a catastrophe. And if you lose Burks for the year, which could be the case, that's not going to be a major coup for you. That's not going to help you out. But nonetheless, 4-1, a major big deal win, 4 in a row after losing week 1, which also was on the road. That's a quality loss. No one's going to ding them for it. And we got to have this conversation. I'm going to write about it more on WV Sports Now, but and it has not been pretty. They have many issues. This West Virginia team they're not going to be a 10-win team or anything like that. They're going to lose some games, I'm sure. They're not going to win the Big 12, I'm sure. But got to give kudos to Neil Brown for this record, to be honest with you. He's had to coach his butt off at times, and no, he's not been perfect. And yes, it's not been good enough prior to this year. And yes, if they lost again, he would have been fired. But a bowl season or more, he's not going anywhere. 2 more wins, he's not going anywhere. And separate from that, dare I say this team deserves votes to be ranked? Dare I say they should be? I mean, you're looking at the teams in that bottom 25. 20-25. We're talking about Florida that was there. I believe they lost. LSU losing to Ole Miss, so they're going to putter it around. Do they stay ranked? Obviously, Ole Miss a good team. I mean, Utah losing, they're probably going to stay ranked because they lost to a ranked team, but they're going to fall back. Wisconsin's already been exposed earlier in the year when they were supposed to be a behemoth for the Big Ten West. I mean, they've had a bad loss already this season. Northwestern's now lost a couple times. They used to be ranked. And these are just teams that have been in that bottom tier, the top 25 throughout the last several weeks. Obviously, not all of them there this past week or entering this week. Maryland, a co-host of mine, one of my good friends, covers the program. He co-hosts a podcast that we have, a long-running podcast. He covers Maryland. He's trying to bang on the drum of them being ranked. They play no one. They have not one quality win. I could argue West Virginia has certainly won, if not more than one. You could say we won about Pitt and Texas Tech. That's an arch rival, and that was a team that was predicted to be top 5 in the conference. But if you want to take those away because those teams aren't good and they have bad losses, TCU is a quality win. TCU is a quality win on the road. That is the reigning national runner-up, even though now they have 2 losses. The Colorado loss, not a bad one. And this is a 4-1 West Virginia team, so maybe not a bad one here, but certainly worse than the Colorado loss. you would imagine. They had their moments. TCU should have won this game. TCU should have dominated West Virginia. TCU had money in the bank to roll the Mountaineers, and the 2022 Mountaineers would have lost this game by 20-plus points. 100%. This team has heart. This team doesn't quit. This team is in the personality maybe of its head coach. Back against the wall, players trying to fight for their careers like Neil Brown has been. I mean, Beanie Bishop wasn't on last year's team. He has been a tremendous addition. That guy plays with his hair on fire every play. He is all over the place, and I could see it more on TV than even when I'm at the games. Unbelievable. Only his second year on Power 5. Didn't work out in Minnesota. Prior to that was a Group of 5 player. If Burks is down, Beanie Bishop's even going to have more opportunities, but the two of them together have been a force. And to be fair, Burks did not play well prior to getting hurt. That's just a fact. So Beanie Bishop relied on heavily in this game all the way through, prior to Burks getting hurt and certainly after, and has been a stud. And if West Virginia could have converted some of those turnovers, maybe they would have ran this game sooner. They would have got this win sooner and locked it up sooner. But TCU probably overall, the way they all played, looked like the better team. Certainly the better team on offense. Certainly the way this game was going early on. I thought they were just going to pick apart the Mountaineers defensively. That secondary that was so bad earlier in the year against Duquesne and Penn State, I thought that was going to creep up again. But no, they clamped down. They got together. You saw the coaches, Neil Brown and Jordan Leslie, talking to the team after the Burks injury to really rally the troops. They almost looked motivated and more into it after that scenario happened, when, again, last year's team would have folded. Last year's team lacked leadership besides Stills. And you hate to say a team that doesn't have Dante Stills has more leadership, but that's the case. They at least have more overall leadership. The chemistry appears better. They are playing with more heart. They have a never-say-die attitude. They're playing more together. They have more of a brotherhood now. They're flat out better. They've missed less tackles, number one on defense, and they missed a lot of them early in this game and missed more of them in this game than they usually miss. But they picked it up at the end, certainly in the second half. And throughout the season, prior to this game at least, they missed the second fewest tackles in the entire Big 12. Only Cincinnati had missed less tackles. TCU, a team missing a lot of tackles despite winning prior to this game, but West Virginia, second fewest missed tackles in the conference. That's a big deal. That's a big deal to the change of the defense, for sure. Back to the fundamentals, and it's worked. And I do have some chatters here. Just going to be a quick post-game show. I want to do something since I'm home and Alan there in person. Then I got to quickly help him with this post-game coverage and get, some more content up there for the next day. But pound and ground, baby. Fight like the wild dogs. I mean, I guess that kind of is the West Virginia mentality and style this season there, ground and pound. And it's not like the ground and pound has really just been clicking on all cylinders. CJ had a bad day against Texas Tech. Jaheim White kind of got it going in this game, but they didn't go through the running back system as much as they usually do, clicking 3 or 4 backs. Obviously, Green a lot on the ground with his legs. And again, that 35-yarder right after TCU scored, that was a big deal because it's almost like, okay, West Virginia's going to answer no matter what TCU does, even though their offense is so great. And you figure you got to put 20-plus up, if not 30-plus up to beat TCU. They got 24, and that was enough. 24-21, West Virginia wins it. True grit, Q Quincy Rhodes. And then people thought I was crazy to support Neil Brown. This is why I did. You can see the improvement with a very young team for the most part. And this is kind of a young team, despite obviously Zach Frazier, Doug Nestor. Green's been there a while, despite this is his first year as a starter. Kind of a young team. Devin Carter, an older player. Cole Taylor. But CJ's still in his second year. Jaheim White's a true freshman. So is Rodney Gallagher getting playing time. Has yet to really have a big play. And Traylon Ray, another young player, a freshman. A lot of recruits relied on for this team. Sean Martin stepping up after, kind of replacing Stills as that defensive line leader. Last year was Aubrey Burke's first year as a starter. This is his second. Beanie Bishop, a veteran, but first year with West Virginia, second in a Power 5 program. So kind of young, kind of inexperienced, but also there's some leaders there. It's kind of maybe a perfect blend, to be honest. So anything else you guys got to say, I'll read it here on the show. Maybe I'll talk back to you a little bit. This is not going to be a long hour journey here. I'll definitely do more shows and give you more analysis, and you can hear me, whether it be on Sirius or with my good friend Alex Weirspiel on WKMZ. I'm there on Tuesdays as we get more into this. But yeah, a lot of juniors. So yeah, like the leaders are juniors. They're gonna, which is good for the program. They're gonna likely be back next year. I mean, yeah, Frazier and Nestor probably NFL players. Everybody else coming back, you would figure. Beanie Bishop, I believe this is his last year of eligibility though, so he would be done. And he's probably the most impactful player on that defense. But even with Neil Brown, and obviously it's not been good enough, under 500 entering the season, only the one bowl win. I get it. It's below West Virginia standards as the 15th winningest program. And we can argue all day on whether they should claim a 22 national title or whatever else, and any claims that programs have that don't really count, or any of that BS. It's a successful, good program throughout history. Okay, it's lost a lot of bowl games, in a lot of bowl games, won enough of them. The last 30 years, a lot of major success for sure. Obviously with Rich Rod and even Dana, despite that one bad year, did win an Orange Bowl, 7-8 wins. Usually it's a contender most of that tenure. What Neil Brown has done in year 5 has not been enough. It has been below the standard, 100%. Again, 15 conference titles for the program throughout its history, and that includes a lot of years as an independent. And not even sniffing really anything like the Big 12 since being there. Maybe 1 or 2 tries, but not close to being Big 12 champ. Not saying they're going to do it this year, but again, below the bar, below the standard. And yet the defense had been good every year prior to 2022. So the defense has always been good even under Neil Brown, except for 2022. There's now proof that was an aberration. The defense again playing well this year, and it hasn't been perfect. TCU did score, but the defense held Pitt to 6, even while they're losing. Cincinnati, Virginia Tech beat them. They're scoring more than 6 in those games, obviously. Texas Tech scoring more than they scored against West Virginia in their other games. And then TCU's offense, one of the better offenses in the country, despite a new QB this year, and the guy actually who thought he won the job a year ago. 21. That's all they put up against West Virginia, despite looking really good early on. You got to give credit to Jordan Leslie. You got to give credit to the defense, who also did that so banged up, losing all those players. And besides Tom McGreemack, we're looking at all those players on the defense that left that game. And Burks, a major deal. He struggled early in the game, but he is a major deal, was going to pick it up. He's had a solid year overall, certainly played really well against Texas Tech, to give him his due, and a leader of that team for sure. Wendell, is it crazy to think this defense has finally arrived? Think the offense will get better as the season goes? All of your young receivers will get better with playing time, 9-3 possible. I predicted 6-6 entering the season, and they would make a bowl game, and people thought I was being too optimistic, and I'm usually keeping it real, whether it's good or bad or ugly. It's how I've been in my entire career. And some people think I'm too negative, some think I'm too positive. It's just keeping it real on what actually is going on. And I thought 6-6. And that's whether you win the bowl game or not. I wasn't doing that. So I was just doing 6-6 regular season. They already got 4. They're 4-1. And they're going to lose. It's not like they're going to go 11-1. I'll put money down. They're going to lose games. But most of their tough games the rest of the season are at home. They've absolutely shown that they can be good at home. And the crowd has been into it and helped them at home. Even with fans wanting Neil Brown fired this year and wanting them to lose, the crowd has been into it. Certainly was against Pitt for the brawl. Maybe that's a rival, but they also were into it against Texas Tech, and team West Virginia hadn't beaten in a while, but not really a rival. You want that again. You want that atmosphere again the rest of the season. And the Big 12, unlike last year when TCU got in the playoff despite not winning the conference, Kansas State obviously wins the conference. They're in a major bowl game. TCU does win one of those major bowl games in the playoff. They end up losing as the national runner-up. They beat Michigan, for crying out loud, and then lose to Georgia, who's building a dynasty. The Big 12 was brutal last year. I believe TCU beat 5 ranked teams last year, which is why they got in despite not winning the conference, and they deserved it. 5 ranked wins, undefeated regular season. You lose the conference title game to another major bowl team from your same conference. I mean, that's a big deal. West Virginia was 5-7. They were not good, but some of their wins were actually big deals against Oklahoma State, against Baylor, certainly against Oklahoma for the first time since both have been in the Big 12, as Oklahoma now departs for the SEC. So the Big 12 had ranked teams. It had ranked teams. TCU deserved to be in the playoff last year. Kansas State had a special year. They deserve that. That's already more than some other conferences are giving you this season and did last year. So the Big 12 in 2022 was a good conference. And I'm not talking basketball, I'm talking football. West Virginia was not good. The Big 12 was good. You get into 2023, it appears the Big 12 is not good, maybe overrated in some capacity, or at least entering the season. TCU is not a contender again. Kansas State is there. Texas looks like the juggernaut as they leave the conference. Maybe they're going to win it this year. Oklahoma looks a lot better than they were last year, of course. They're like normal now. Oklahoma State looks worse. Baylor looks bad until they got that win over UCF, and maybe UCF is not that good. Cincinnati's not a world beater by any means. BYU can be beat for sure. Houston looks bad, like no defense, bad. Losing to Rice earlier this season. Didn't check to see what they did today, but bad. It's going to be at home for them. It's going to be in Houston against Dana. So I've always penciled that as a bad game. I think West Virginia could lose, despite what goes on earlier in the season, even if you beat Pitt and TCU. And it would be a West Virginia thing to lose that game. But I don't know how much it would matter because Houston's not going to be a contender. I mean, they're so far behind the 8 ball, that would just mess things up for WVU. But WVU's not going to really win the conference anyway either, probably. You want to win the game, obviously. That would be bad. But Houston's not good. They're not good. 2 wins are there. 3 wins are there. 4 wins are there. I mean, 7, 8, 9 wins are possible. I don't think more than 9. And if I had to bet money now, I would still say 8's like the ceiling. Thinking wins will be Houston, BYU, Cincy, Oklahoma State, Baylor. That is 5 more wins. And that gets you to 9. That would be this is insane to say. They go 9-3 this year with people saying they were a MAC team that was going to win 1 game before the season. Brown's freaking Big 12 Coach of the Year. I'm not saying he's going to win the national award because those awards usually go to teams that are in major bowl games and in the playoff. Like one of them will get it. Maybe Brown should get a vote or 2. But I'm going to be reasonable and say he's Big 12 Coach of the Year. I mean, damn. I'm not joking. If they go 9-3, what the hell? Now, I'm not saying they're going to go 9-3. If I had to bet, I'm thinking more 7, 8 wins. Still, I'm thinking more 7, 8 wins. But they win 9. They do more than 9, which, again, I don't see possible, really, still. Certainly, they got to be better than they've been. And I said they had to play better to win this game. I don't know if I thought they would play like this and win this game and go 9 minutes without a completion and etc. But nonetheless, they did. And TCU probably is partly responsible for giving it to them. But they go 9, and that's true. That's possible for Brown for this season. This might be one of the more special years in Mountaineer history for how much pressure was on this. And obviously, the program's had 10-win seasons. They've done way better, 93 undefeated regular season. Like, we're just talking about the last 30-plus years, Major Harris to Pat White years and Steve Slayton and even the Dana Orange Bowl with Gino and company. Obviously, there have been really great years for this program throughout its history. We're talking mostly the last 30, 35 years, but even prior to that. It's the 15th winningest program in history. So it's not Bama, it's not Ohio State, it's not USC, Texas, Michigan, but it's a damn good program throughout its history. For the most part, there's been, there was bad decades in there. But certainly in the last 30 plus years, it's mostly been good. In this Neo Brown period, the 0-2 start last year, first 0-2 since 79. It's been really, really bad with Neo Brown. And it's not like I was around him. Man's working his butt off, but they just haven't been winning. It's not been good enough. And if he lost this year, he would be fired. He would deserve it. I said he was on the hook 2 years ago. They didn't fire him then. I knew they weren't going to fire him last year, but I probably would have, to be honest with you. Most fans would have, to be honest with you. That's clear. But 9 wins with all the pressure, with all the adversity, with no one believing in them, this would feel special. It would be special to fans. I really, really believe that. And again, they've had better years, but this would be special. to make this somehow that type of year and get a legit bowl game with history. No, we're not talking about the Boca Raton Bowl here. But hell, they get in the Boca Raton Bowl and they win 6-7 games after what they were predicted to do. It still means Brown's going nowhere. That's still a good year. And who knows next year, because as Brian alluded to here in our chat, they got a lot coming back. This isn't a one and done. I mean, they're going to probably lose the best defensive player and they're going to lose their center. It's not like they're not going to lose some pieces. But this is something you can build on. But as I round this out, because I got some more to write about, we got a lot more coverage clicking over there at WV Sports Now. Again, head over there for all of our coverage and the work that's happening while I'm doing this show. Again, thanks to Alan for being down there in Fort Worth for the in-person coverage. And I did a lot at home, but that was a big help. But the West Virginia Mountaineers are 4-1. No one would have predicted it. I didn't. You didn't listening. I don't even know if freaking Neil, he said he thought this could be the case, but I don't know how much money he would have put down if you put a gun to his head and said you got to throw your own personal cash, and he got plenty of it. Same thing with Ren Baker. I mean, they thought they probably, and hell, if they were 3-2 and lost a close game in TCU on the road, it would still be better than what many would have thought. It would, I could see if they would have lost this game the way this game unfolded, it would have felt like one that got away for sure. TCU was trying to give it to them. West Virginia kind of felt lucky throughout this game, despite the field goal issue there at the end of the first half, and despite all the injuries, obviously. But number one, quarterback controversy, it's gone. Garrett Green's the guy when healthy, 100%. Can't just say Nico was winning even though he wasn't playing well, and somehow the team galvanized, and you got to count wins even though wins aren't a stat. Well, Garrett Green got the biggest win of the year. Garrett Green started, played the whole way through. Nico didn't take a snap. Biggest win of the year, Garrett Green. And that's 9 minutes without a completion. That's unacceptable. That cannot continue. That's not just on him. That's on the receivers. It's on the O-line. It's on the overall team. The O-line didn't even have a great game, honestly. I mean, that miscue there with that penalty that basically ruined the field goal, that's a 3-point swing. If they would have had this game get tied up at the end and they go to overtime and then lose, that could be why when you really trace back. So a lot of people didn't have their best games. But somehow West Virginia did it. And that's the story of the freaking year. Everyone doesn't have their best game, or they don't give you that A+ effort, and somehow they do enough. And the freaking team wins when no one thought they would. But again, West Virginia 4-1, 2-0 in the Big 12. Most importantly, for crying out loud, they're winning Big 12 games. Because obviously Penn State would be the biggest win if they somehow would have won that. But if they would have won that and lose this, it's not actually better, because now you're 2-0 in conference. So the loss is the most quality of all. You're 4-1. You're 2-0 in the conference. You got to bye to get freaking healthy. You got Houston, who sucks even though you're on the road and you stay in Texas. Got Oklahoma State, who is not good. This is not Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State from a decade ago. This isn't your older brother's Oklahoma State Cowboys. They suck. They miss the most freaking tackles. That should be a win, and if it's not, you're messing up. They suck. They're not good. That could be two more. That could be bowl. You could be a bowl. You could be a bowl team already right there. 3 weeks from now, we could be speaking, and West Virginia is a bowl team. They weren't a bowl team at all last year. They didn't finish bowl eligible. People thought they would win one game this whole season against Duquesne, an FCS team, and they didn't even start out good against. It took a 2-hour weather delay before they picked it up. It was 14-10 at that point. They weren't looking good. And yet they beat Pitt, they beat Texas Tech, they freaking beat TCU. 4 wins in a row, 3 of them against Power 5 teams. 2 of them in conference, includes an arch rival victory. You can say what you want about the opponents, and I'm not, again, Pitt, not good. Texas Tech, TCU, not what they were. At least one quality win there, this one on the road, and this is it. The offense looked better than it's been, even though there's still problems. The defense, again, played with its hair on fire when it needed to. It bended, but it didn't fully break towards the end of the game. They had their problems, but it did enough. With all the injuries as well, overcoming all of those injuries. And I don't think TCU was ready for Garrett Green on the ground, even though they kind of stopped him through the air. So nonetheless, Neil Brown and the Fighting Freaking Mountaineers are 4-1, have 4 straight victories, and are 2-0 in the Big 12 Conference. Unfreaking believable. I'll leave you with that. Head over to WV Sports Now for all of our coverage, not only tonight, but throughout the week and beyond. More coverage of this Mountaineer football team, and then, of course, the basketball team and all the news going on there on and off the court. And then everything else going on with WVU athletics and really even the region. We got a Marshall story that went viral recently, actually. And, of course, subscribe here. Find me on social media, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Mike Ostie 11. Right below me there on the graphic. I appreciate those who were in this chat. I appreciate those who talk with me, whether it was, sane or otherwise, on social media throughout the game. I'm appreciative of Alan for being there in person to pinch hit, and of the team overall for the coverage. And we're going to keep on churning because this Mountaineer team is continuing to churn, and they're churning wins. So we're going to try to catch up. But nonetheless, again, West Virginia 4-1. They beat TCU on the road in Fort Worth, reigning national runner-up despite a different team. 4-1, 2-0 in conference, 4 straight wins, and the only loss is to one of the best teams in the country on the road. Unbelievable.